This video will now focus on returning the carburettor back into the engine. We did take the opportunity to check all the valve clearances on each of the tappets, one of the covers being there. So the first thing we need to do is to take out these two rags here that have been preventing any debris getting into the cylinders while we've been working on the carburettor. We're going to be feeding the carburettor in from the left hand side of the engine and just gradually working it across to sit on the two openings there in the cylinder to connect with the carburettor. So we've now got the carburettor seated firmly back into the engine, attached to the two cylinders, and then we're just tightening up the clamp screw that goes into the rear cylinder inlet. And then we're going to do the same on the front one there. So that's sitting nice and tight in the engine now, no movement at all. So we can start to reconnect the electrical cables at the front, the breather pipes, throttle cable, choke cable. And so we're going to reconnect it all up. So we have now reconnected the 1, 2, 3, 4 cables, electrical cables, and we've retained the wires with the soft clip that's attached to the bolt on the bottom left hand corner of this valve cover. So they're nice and secure now. On the right hand side of the bike we're going to reconnect this hose here coming from bottom of the carburettor on the right hand side back into the white plastic housing, and the two metal circular retaining clips put back in position. This hose here can go back onto its seating on the right hand side of the carburettor. And then using a pair of pliers we're just going to seat that retaining clip back down into its position. There we are. We're doing the same on the left hand side of the carburettor. Goes back onto its seating, and then with a pair of pliers this time again, just moving the metal retaining clip down. Next reattaching the throttle cable. So that's the tablet connector seated firmly, and then we just need to tighten up this lower locking nut to secure that rear cable. When putting the front throttle cable in, don't put the cable in position before first putting the tablet end connector into the throttle wheel. You need to put that in first and then secure the cable with the bolts. Next we're going to reattach the choke cable. So the tablet end connector going to go back into here, and then this is going to be screwed back down onto this bolt here, one of the two bolts that secures the diaphragm cover. Just going to move the choke lever on the handlebars, make sure that mechanism's working. I'm going to reattach this breather hose now. This is hose number 1. This is going on the front end of the carburetor. That's seated nicely on there. I've given both these hoses a good clean, as there was some residue carb cleaner, particularly on the front one, from previous times when I've sprayed it into the air filter, and I won't be doing that again. There should be a breather hose that goes on this outlet here on the top of the carburetor and comes up towards the airflow box, the top airflow box, but it seems to be missing on mine, so I have ordered a new one. So this is the top airflow box. I've got the two large outlets that will connect onto those hoses that I've just fitted. That's the recess where the missing breather hose that I've just mentioned would go, and then at the front here we've got another breather hose connector that goes onto the hose that goes into the front cylinder, and then once this is back on the bike, there's another rubber hose here that connects this top floor airflow box to the air filter. This small breather hose has now come through the post, so it's got some kind of wire mesh at the top there to stop any particles getting through into the carburetor. This breather hose was the one that was missing, and I had to reorder, and it goes on top of the carburetor here, on top of that port there. Thought it might have come with a metal retaining clip, but it didn't, it just came the hose itself, and then that will feed up into the top airflow box, into the recess that's there. So I've reconnected the front breather hose first. You can see the metal retaining clip there to hold it onto that front connector. Next I'm going to press the unit down onto the two hoses that feed into the carburetor. That airflow box now seated back onto the two main hoses, just tightening up the rear retaining bolt. And then I'm going to go back and secure all four metal retaining clips fastening hoses 1 and 2 between the carburetor and the top airflow box. So I didn't tighten those up until I got everything positioned. Next to go on is this connecting hose. and that's secured by a metal retaining clip and screw, which you can access from the top here. I'm now putting the air filter box back on, retained by these two screws here, one there and one there, and it fits onto the connecting hose at the rear. I'm going to replace this what seems to be a cosmetic cover now. I can't see any other purpose for it really, other than to look good. It's now time to put the fuel tank back on the bike. And it's going to go seated onto these rubber buffers. But remember to replace the breather pipe before sliding the tank back onto the two rubber buffers. So the breather pipe tap outlet is underneath at the back of this fuel tank. Next we're going to reattach the fuel pipe onto the fuel tap. And with some pliers need to reposition the metal retaining clip, and then we're going to turn the tap to reserve. So it's time to fill up the carburetors with fuel now. So when we turn the key, hear the familiar clicking sound as fuel is drawn through from the tank. I'm going to turn that again just to make sure that it's fully fueled up. Okay, that seems as though the carbs are now full. Just want to have a quick check as best I can. Can't see anything from this side, but I want to check that there's no fuel leaking out of the carburetors. Well, that looks good. So we're now going to try and start the bike up. Fingers crossed. Put a little bit of choke on. Start the button down. Here we go. So I'm just going to leave that running now for a few minutes. Let all airlocks get drawn through, things to settle down. So it will take a few miles before the oil gets circulated again and the fuel system becomes compact. So that sounded pretty good. I'm going to take it out for a run shortly. There was some steam coming off the engine a little bit, which is to be expected with the valves being adjusted, because when you take the covers off there is some oil that you maybe don't catch on the rags that you put underneath, and it drips onto the cylinder, so that'll burn off in no time. So we're going to put the rear seat and front seat back on now and take her out for a run. Next, going to put the electrical connectors back in place. And then we've got the 3 plastic retaining clips. rider seat going back in place with a retaining bolt at the back of the seat. Rear seat going back on. And right, pull that.